Good morning, it's Caroline Stevens seeking the truth. On today's show, I'm joined by two Australians, Stephen Lindley and Andy. Now, I've forgotten your surname, Andy. This is not very professional, is it, on a Sunday morning? Andy.
We'll just leave it as Andy Answer. It's all good.
Right, well, you see, the trouble is, I need my glasses on to read that print. It's so tiny. So anyway, we're going to be talking about we share a heritage, don't we? We're also sharing the New World Order together, just like many other countries around the world. And but firstly, we're going to look at not taking mortgages out and birth certificates, because I've got lots of friends in the UK who want to believe in this, but they insist on a paper trail. And they see all these videos up on YouTube, which sadly I cannot access anymore, but that's another story. But Andy, firstly, can you explain to people about mortgages? Is it the death grip? That's a mortgage, isn't it? And where is this paper trail? Over to you.
Mortgage, it basically means a death pledge in French. So it's quite a clever wording. But the money doesn't really come from the bank at all. The money they take from your trust. And they basically download the money before you actually sign your final application. And the money's in the bank account beforehand. And then they basically get you to sign a mortgage for it. Now, you'll often pay a subscription fee as well, monthly, for having the mortgage in place, or the managing of the mortgage. Then actually pays an insurance payment. So not only do they get the money initially, they then fractionally reserve 90% from that. They then, if you ever not pay, they claim it again. If you don't pay twice or three times, they get the courts in and nick your house, or you'll just pay the principal and the interest for the rest of your life practically, and pay them again. So they'll end up with a payment 3 to 4 times, and that comes from your birth trust. And that's one of the reasons that they take your birth certificate when they open a bank account, because they need the details from your birth certificate, which is the number at the top right-hand corner, which is your name, your date of birth, and your parents' names. And from that, they can access your trust. And that's exactly what the common law court in England is taking from people. And that's our concern, Stephen and I's massive concern, as to why they need all that information. And you have added a little bit to that by who they're connected to, which then interests us even more. So I'll pass it back to you.
Oh, right, okay. Well, anybody then who has your entire birth certificate details, such as your parents' names, maiden name, number on your birth certificate, could, with the right knowledge, access this trust fund. Now, Stephen, maybe you can come in at this point, please. Can you show to people or explain to people about this paper trail connecting with this trust fund? Where does this trust fund come from? I know about the birth certificate registration number being on the, traded on the stock exchange, but does that actually give enough of a paper trail to support what you're saying?
Well, it comes down to a matter of research, and you get a compilation of things from a number of different people. So it basically comes down to the fact that we all have a birthright. You would have heard of the term birthright, whereas people are allocated, I think it's around 1.6 hectares of land when you're born. There's a value to that. And the other part of the equation is when you're born, and you're born in a certain socio-economic realm, if you like where your parents come from, whether you're middle class, lower class, whatever, as far as you look at that way, and that you're expected to pay a certain amount of tax during your lifetime. So there's a value attributed to that, and then that's floated on the futures market. And what people have been able to find when they access the numbers to their birth certificate is that this number has been traded a number of times. And so it ends up with stamps. So it's the sort of thing I haven't delved into myself, but I've take stock from people that have done certain things, and Andy will tell you that I don't like speaking to things if I don't have first-hand experience of it. But I've been here long enough that I accept what I'm told as far as the birth certificates being traded. They are on bond paper, and it is very, very important. I know that when you go to court, for example, that's a wagering policy being run in the court, that they're betting that they're going to get your signature on a piece of paper, and they monetize that because the judge is a banker. When he sits at the bench, again, we talked about French before, that's a banque. It's a bank. So that's what he is. He's a master banker. So all these things that we get fines and different things, a lot of the time you look at them, and if you have a different mindset, when you look at it, you'll see that it looks like a check. And it is, and it's waiting for your signature. So they're more than double dipping. So they're getting you to pay, plus they're able to draw from your birth certificate. But that doesn't mean that a policeman that you deal with or somebody at a local level, doesn't mean that they know that, but they know the procedures that they have to go through.
Right. So when you're talking about not paying for things, I guess probably on social media, you've seen quite a lot of information about Nasara and Gasara.
Yes.
Do you, for me, I haven't investigated it. I simply say to people, well, as far as I'm aware, it was all supposed to happen in 2001. Nothing, no, I don't know of anybody whose debts have been paid off by this. And until I see proof, until I see the evidence of it working, then it's not something that I will promote. What's your take on that, Stephen? Please.
By and large, I agree with you. Now, I have an awareness of some funds that exist, and I've seen paperwork in relation to that. But what I've also seen is there's no vehicle to release it. And the fear is that when it is released, that it'll be stolen. Now, whether that's Nasara Gasara, I wouldn't say that, but the amount of money that these people are looking at is quite substantial. And that was built up over time in ancient compared to us. But shall we say in the recent history, by people trading and then not taking, they say, banking the proceeds from their trading rather than taking it in stock or taking, because they didn't have a need for money as such. So whether it might come from Pacific Islands and that sort of thing. So that was offset. Let's say if you were marketing timber and that thing, it was offset by gold, and that was held in a central place. So I've seen evidence of that in paperwork wise, but I haven't seen the physical evidence of it. And when I look at the paperwork, I can still see lots of reasons why that might just be really pretty fancy paperwork and might not represent a tangible thing. So until I could see evidence of it, and like you said, see people's loans being paid off or something like that, I'm old enough now that that's been like a carrot dangling off a string in front of my face for a long, long time. I try not to focus on it at all. It's something we'd all like to have happen. But then the other thing I wonder about is if everybody's get paid off and everybody's got a whole heap of money, would that make it better for us?
Well, that's a very good point, actually, Stephen, because I'm going to bring in a bit of a spiritual aspect here. I was watching a YouTube video through somebody else's account, shall I say. They were showing me the video. If anybody says I've hacked an account, because, you know, people will think this way. Stephen, for your knowledge and for people back home, I've had my YouTube account removed, including my Caroline Stevens Seeking the Truth YouTube channel. YouTube gave me 5 days warning. They were going to remove the channel. I know it's happening to other people too. And literally, I can't now, it's difficult for me to access YouTube videos full stop. So that's just a bit of an explanation for you in Australia and for people in the UK, because it's all happened very recently. And I get messages saying, what's happened to your account? So I did see a video yesterday. It was very, very, a very articulate business lady with 5 sons. And she was talking about life in the UK today and how there's this mission creep. She did not actually establish that a lot of the problems are to do with the banking system, which I felt was a key area that was missed. But she did point out the mission creep, the mask situation, and so forth. Can we just switch topic? Because I've lost my thread now here. Can you tell us in the UK what is actually happening in your part of Australia? Because I think, Andy, you're based in Victoria, aren't you? Are you actually in Victoria at all? Sorry.
Steve in New South Wales. Unfortunately, I'm in country Victoria, so I'm not under stage 4 lockdown. But it doesn't make sense what they're doing. The lockdown and curfew. Nobody seems to know who's put their name up to the curfew. So you know, even Daniel Andrews says, "Well, someone mentioned it, and the health officers refused to say it, and the police have said they didn't say it. So it's come from somewhere." But it just seems amazing that people are happy to accept it. I'm utterly shocked that there's not a massive revolution going on.
So basically, we hear from people in Australia. And Stephen, I don't know if you're in Victoria or Melbourne. Are you in? You're in.
I'm in New South Wales, and just to give you a contrast, in New South Wales, and to get here,
That's Sydney way.
Yeah, I'm 100 miles south of Sydney. And I've just driven for 2 hours and 15 minutes to get here. And I didn't see one police car. I didn't see anything. Didn't even see anyone with a mask on. Absolutely nothing. So it's we consider that the people south of New South Wales, the Mexicans in Victoria, they're obviously a subspecies. And that's why they've had to be corralled inside their state, and it's to protect the rest of the country from the lowlifes that live in Victoria. So it's about time the system recognised the genetic deformities, the genetic superiority of the other states compared to Victoria. That could be the only reason.
Oh, we're not starting an argument on that.
He's very good at taking the proverbial.
I would never do that, Andy.
No, of course not, Steve. Of course not.
So it's true. What is happening? What we hear on social media, because I do speak to other Australians, and they say, "Oh, you know, that's not that's not the account we get from people who live in Melbourne and Victoria." Is this parallel lives here? What is actually happening in Victoria? Is it true that they are on a stage 4 lockdown in the city centre of Melbourne? Is it just Melbourne and its suburbs?
Melbourne and some of the suburbs. I'm not sure how far it goes out. I haven't really looked at it, but there is certainly a lockdown. There is police on the roads with roadblocks trying to stop people going more than 5 kilometres. There's masks everywhere. I don't personally wear one. I went to Avoca on the way back today from Talbot. I visited a friend down at Talbot last night. And we went down there. We came back through Avoca and we got food in a cafe. Everybody else was wearing masks. Some of them had got them just hanging on their ears, off their face, you know, but there's a lot of people conforming to it, which amazes me, to be honest.
Well, I have to say that in the UK we can wear I've done a video on hidden disabilities for people who aren't able to wear a mask, and it covers a whole multitude of disabilities, including sleep apnea, mental health issues, and type 2 diabetes, and asthma, and heart attacks.
But let's be honest.
If you read all the exceptions, all the hidden disabilities, I think most people could actually find a disability that they would be linked to, especially with what we eat these days.
Let's be honest. If social distancing works, why do you need a mask? You know, and why do they want you social distancing? It's because your love aura travels up to 6 feet away from you, which people can feel as they walk past. It's just something that naturally passes from one to another. The smile of the face, the open of the, it's something people react to. Yet, if you've got your mouth covered, if you're keeping 6 foot away, it's just isolating people. And
we
I mean,
say,
people
Andy,
grown,
we could say that a smile is infectious.
absolutely. You know, if someone smiles, another person smiles.
Well, at least
You know,
they've stopped that infection.
Well, that's a fair point. I thought it was something to do with tracking. People have said on social media it's to do with tracking. That's why it's 6 feet apart. Also, isn't it? It's to do with the numbering as well, isn't it? Numerology.
It could well be. Could well be.
I have friends that could speak to the numerology, but I couldn't speak to that. But the distancing that you're talking about, that's the same as for the military. When they go on operations, they have to stay certain distances apart so that they can be counted. Because when they get too close together, their energy fields overlap and they can't pick them up.
That's what I've been seeing. So thanks for that, Stephen. What's happening over here? We have to wear a mask in a shop unless we've got the disability lanyards. And although most shops, especially the supermarkets, are generally pretty okay if you weren't wearing a mask, because at the end of the day, it's private property. But it's interesting that actually the charity shops are more stringent, especially the charities which are run by big, well, questionable charities, shall we say, where the money goes. So what else is happening over here? We've got now fines of £10,000 being imposed on large gathering events. That started a few days ago. So we had an event the following day in Trafalgar Square, which was a large gathering, 35,000, and maybe just one person gets a fine of £10,000, which they crowdfund for. And, you know, we have to say, well, who actually did organise that event? Because normally these events are run by the government. So then I don't think you or I could run an event in Trafalgar Square, but people don't get this at all. You know, we could just rock up, you know, just say to the police, just expect 35,000 people. That's never going to happen, I tell you. Okay, so let's get that matter cleared up. But then we have a situation where just down the road from where I live, an 18-year-old organises a house party. Police are called. His parents now are faced with a £10,000 fine. It is so wrong. And I just wish I knew who that family was, because I know people will say, oh, it's a this matter or that matter, they don't have to pay it, etc., etc. But the majority...
They only need to learn a conditional acceptance, or they need to learn how to make the negotiable instrument into an instrument that gets them money instead of pays them money. At the end of the day, it's a contract. Everything in this world is a contract. So every document is a contract. So you either accept it conditionally, asking, you know, how do I pay this with no lawful money in society? Where is the jurisdiction of society? And are you using my trade name to make a contract upon me? And we put this on our common law website under my conditional letters of acceptance. We've got another one with Rick that we're going to do, a good friend of mine that we're going to put together a really good video on actually, it's a negotiable instrument. So if you receive a notice, it's not a bill, it's a notice. So you've got to look at the words, the terminologies. We get all, you know, adrenaline starts going on, the policeman's red and blue light. It's the you know, the panic scenario. They knock on your door, they give you a notice, but a notice is only a contract. It's an offer to contract. So you take the offer to contract and you either conditionally accept it on your terms with a set time scale and return it with a fee schedule if they want to continue playing with you, or you make it into a negotiable instrument and you change this instrument and make it non-negotiable and send it back to them. And you know, this is what we're understanding in this process. It's all about corporations. There's your corporate name, your full caps name, there's your name, and then there's the Holy Spirit, which is your crown. So there's, you know, there's three different things. We're all crown. And this is something we've been looking into in our group at the moment about being crown. If you look at legislation, if you put your name wherever it says crown, that doesn't mean the Queen, it means all of us. We're the crown. She's the corporate crown. If she's still alive, I don't know, she might not be. I mean, the amount of children she pinched in Canada and God knows where else, she's probably gone by now. But, oh, sorry, I saw the lip move there, Caroline.
Oh gosh, there's so many people on Facebook. Maybe they work for the 77th Brigade, because that's an organisation that I came across only a few weeks ago. I did a video on it. And there's a division in the UK Army based in Berkshire that is classed as the 77th Brigade. So they're basically on Twitter, on social media, just generally putting out, I guess, a certain agenda, shall we say. So, you know, these are the people that help promote the wrong information. And so there's lots of people in the UK either don't wish to believe.
I can't believe that. I can't believe what you're saying. You're telling me there's people purposely putting out wrong information. So
in the British Army, in the UK Army, that's right.
That's just terrible. Now, can I ask a question?
Sorry, Stephen.
Go back, no, that's all right. I just want to go back to where Andy was before, with what he was talking about in relation to the fines. Do you know if the fines that they're imposing have actually gone through the normal legislation channels?
Well, basically, the government's gone rogue, so they're just imposing. Boris Johnson has this 80-seat majority, so what Boris Johnson says just seems to happen. You know, they've passed this act in March, 28th of March, I think it was this year, what's commonly known as the Coronavirus Act, and they're basically, it allows them to impose and do anything to us basically in the next 2 years.
Same as Daniel Andrews.
Okay,
yeah.
So with what you've got there, it looks like you're actually having people being fined as a result of directives rather than legislation. So, you know, because I'm not familiar with all of your audience, people...
No, it is legislation. No, it is legislation. Sorry, Stephen, it is legislation. The act went through Parliament, uncontested, if you like, in March. It went through, then they went off to for Easter break. So yes, they can do anything. They can do that.
Okay, so here in Australia, we've got allegedly a Prime Minister called Scott Morrison, who's taken an oath to the Queen of Australia. So have you ever been introduced to the Queen of Australia?
Is this a corporate body?
No, it's a trick question.
Trick question, yeah.
There's no such thing. There's no such entity being as the Queen of Australia.
You say the wording he actually said in his oath, though.
There's that he swears allegiance to Her Majesty, the Queen of Australia.
Majesty.
Majesty.
Yes, that's what he says. That's what he says. It's bullshit.
So I put up a post on Facebook where I put the actual oath that you're supposed to take that's in the Constitution and what he said, and they're not the same thing. So that's enough evidence, straight up. No one else, nothing else needed. You look at that and you go guilty of treason, straight up. Now, if running a country is relatively important compared to other things, like, I don't know, washing the dishes, wouldn't you think if there was an oath to take that you'd get it right? And that if you got it wrong, you go, I think we better have a do-over. No, not that one. You just have a little smirk and off you go, because it's all a play anyway. None of this is real because we're a private corporation, originally registered with the Securities Exchange Commission in New York. Our address is 1601 Massachusetts Avenue, Washington. But from what we can see now, they haven't made a filing since 2011 because too many people became aware of it. And I'm fairly sure I became, where's this going? If I, oh no, bugger, I don't care. I became, sorry, that's just Australian. That's not even what it means. I became a domestic terrorist in 2010, officially, after I had on display at a self-sustainability summit a picture of the Edgar printout for the Commonwealth of Australia showing that they are registered with the Securities Exchange Commission. Now, I don't know that that's why it happened, but it did happen, and I am officially a paper terrorist, or affectionately referred to as a domestic terrorist, for what I considered was really, really minimal, because I've seen people do heaps more things than that. So I'm just wondering if where you are, I can't imagine that your parliament is any more legitimate than ours.
Well, what a lot of
Neither is
people
we,
don't,
for goodness sake.
well, what a lot of people don't realise is that since the Parliament Act was passed in 1911, the House of Lords has really only had power to defer matters such as taxation, increases in taxation. Now, obviously, increases in taxation, I'm not an expert, but I've done quite a few interviews, picked up a lot of information on the way, and done my own research. My understanding is that in the UK Parliament, they're not supposed to impose income tax on the people unless we're at war.
Exactly,
The only war we're facing is a war with our parliamentarians. Now, our parliamentarians, you see, you can go back into time and there were rules in place. You know, we could talk about the Magna Carta and the number of people that will disrespect the Magna Carta. Yet David Cameron, the Prime Minister, when it was signed 800 years ago in 2015, and David Cameron, if I remember rightly, allocated £1 million to the signing of the Magna Carta celebrations. So it must have had some import for David Cameron to do that. So it can't be, disregarded, the Magna Carta. Now, you'll get people that say, oh, well, only a couple of bits are still valid, etc., etc. And people had their knives to the throat, and it applied to just barons and so on. So you'll get all these arguments. But we've also had William Blackstone's books. The William Blackstone's books were very important, and people don't realise the significance of some of the rules and regulations that have been in force for hundreds of years. But over a period of hundreds of years since, certain people have taken charge of our parliament who are actually not supposed to be in parliament. Now, if I mention that word, this video would have to be pulled from YouTube, but this video hopefully will also go on a website called videoband.nl, as in Netherlands. So hopefully this video won't get taken down, because we've covered quite a bit of stuff this morning. But it is certain people, in fact, probably 80% of the Conservative Party, and of course, political parties do not fit with your constitution, they do not fit with our constitution. They're two wings of the same bird, as are any of the political parties that have more than 5,000 members. They immediately get common purpose graduates in there. If they weren't even, they may have been set up by the establishment anyway. Okay, so let's not split hairs over this. So basically, the situation as I see it, having stood for Parliament, because you'll get people saying, well, you stood for Parliament, you were in a party, blah, blah, blah. I didn't know then what I know now. However, I would not have the extensive knowledge that I've got if I hadn't done all those things and seen behind the curtain. And it is important to get it into our heads, really, the learning experiences of doing, because like you were saying, Andy, I think before we went on air, if you have, and Stephen, you just mentioned it as well, if you haven't done it yourself, it's not so easy to talk with experience like Gasara and the banking situation. I've been in politics. I've seen the deals being done behind closed doors between teams of players that are not supposed to be friends with each other. And of course, you can go into the sovereignty and about agenda, the manifestos, and they come to you, they knock on your door and they say, hello, Mr. Lindley, I'm from this party. This is what we believe in. Will you vote for me at the next election? And of course, generally speaking, there'll be some bits you'll like and there'll be some bits you don't. And it's all designed, it's all a con. We've got the banking system that actually writes the rules and regulations for the puppet governments. And that's probably it in a nutshell. So the government is obviously, even before 1933, was well compromised.
Oh, well compromised. I mean, compromised since the start of the Creskyville Trust, which is back in the, you know, like the hundreds.
1666.
And then there's named one, 1854, then you got 1666. But, you know, even when we signed back in 1215 in the Magna Carta, it actually states in the Magna Carta, other contracts previous to this will stand, which was the contract to the Pope, which is all satanic.
This has been Caroline Stevens seeking the truth. This is end of part 1.